If you're worried about dementia, and let's be honest, if you clicked on this video, you probably are, then there's something you need to know. You've been told the first signs of dementia are memory-related, forgetting names, getting lost, losing things, but very often they're not. The first clues that you'll ignore, and I see as a GP, appear years earlier. And if you recognize them, you'll truly have a fighting chance. Let's go through the top 5, starting with your nose. Before we get into these 5 signs, I want to mention something quickly. If you want a simple, practical plan to protect your brain and live longer, stronger, and healthier after 60, I wrote a book specifically for that. The link is in the description, and you can also see on screen right now. Okay, let's get into the signs. Let me ask you something. Have you noticed your sense of smell isn't what it used to be? Coffee in the morning not quite as strong, food tasting a bit flatter. Maybe you don't notice things like cut grass, perfume, or even burning toast the way you once did. Now, before half of you panic, let me say this straight away. A reduced sense of smell is very common as we get older. And after the pandemic, millions of people lost their smell with COVID, and it slowly came back or never quite returned to what it was before. So if you've noticed some change, that doesn't mean dementia. But here's the interesting part. Sometimes what people think is a problem with their nose is actually something happening in their brain, because the nerve that carries smell signals from the nose goes straight into one of the memory centers of the brain, an area called the entorhinal cortex, which sits right beside the hippocampus. And those are some of the very first areas affected in common forms of dementia, like Alzheimer's disease. So when those brain cells start struggling, one of the earliest things that can change isn't memory. It's recognizing smells. Not just smelling something, but identifying what it is. For example, researchers sometimes test this by asking people to identify familiar scents, things like peppermint, coffee, roses, or cinnamon. And what they found is that people who suddenly become worse at identifying these smells are statistically more likely to develop dementia in the following years, compared with people whose sense of smell stays sharp. So if your sense of smell has clearly changed, and especially if it's not bouncing back at all, it's worth mentioning it to your GP. Not because it means dementia, but because sometimes your nose notices changes in the brain before your memory does. But the next sign. This one doesn't surprise people. It worries them because it looks like something else entirely. I want you to think about someone you know. Could be you, could be your partner, your dad, who's just lost their spark. Not sad, not depressed, just stopped caring about things they used to love. The football results they'd always check, the grandkids they'd always ring on Sundays, the garden they used to be out in every morning, and now nothing. Not because something happened, not because they're unwell, just the pilot light went out. In medicine, we call this apathy, and it's one of the most common early features of dementia, particularly Alzheimer's and frontotemporal dementia. Studies have shown that new onset apathy in later life, especially in someone with no long history of depression, actually falls into something we called mild behavioral impairment, MBI, and it marks an increased risk of future dementia. And here's the thing that breaks my heart about this one. The families always notice first. They'll sit in my surgery and say, "He's just not him anymore." And the man sitting next to them looks at me and says, "I feel fine." And he does feel fine. That's the cruel part. Depression makes you feel awful. Apathy, not necessarily. You don't feel sad, you feel nothing. And because it doesn't hurt, people don't seek help. So if someone who loves you has said more than once, "You've lost your spark," or something along those lines, please listen to them. That observation might be worth more than any blood test I could run. 2 signs in, neither of the memory. And you know what's interesting? Both of them get missed because they look like something normal. Getting older. He's just a bit slow. He just lost an interest. The next one gets missed for the same reason. But when I describe it, I think you'll recognize it immediately, and it'll frustrate the hell out of you. I remember a man, a retired engineer, and I let him get his story across to me. I saw him getting more and more frustrated with himself. It happened several times. He was mid-sentence and he'd just stop, look down, start clicking his fingers and shake his head and say, "It's gone." Words. He kept losing them. You know the feeling. You're mid-sentence and the word is right there. You can almost see it, but it won't come out. So you talk around it. You say, the thing you cut bread with. and everyone nods and you move on and you think, it's just age, isn't it? And usually, yes, it is. Losing a word here and there, that's your brain being 68, 70, 80 years old, or whatever. It's not your brain being ill. But here's what I look for as a GP. It's not the occasional blank. It's when the blanks start joining up. Back to that man I was just talking about. His wife was with him, and she said he'd started calling the microwave the food heater. The remote control became the telly thing. Not once, every time. He wasn't searching for the word anymore. He'd replaced it, and he didn't notice he'd done it. That's the bit that matters. When you notice you can't find a word, that's frustrating, but it's normal. When the people around you start noticing your sentences have changed, that's different. Speech getting slower, flatter, like your brain is buffering, trailing off mid-thoughts, not because you've been interrupted, because the thought just went. Right. Do you want to try something? This is a test we actually use in clinic, and feel free to pause the video with this one. You ready? Name as many animals as you can in 60 seconds. Any animals. Go. How did you do? Most people over 60 will get somewhere between 15 and 20. If you got above 12, genuinely, that's reassuring. If you found yourself stuck after 7 or 8, or you kept repeating the same ones, that doesn't mean you have dementia, but it does mean it's worth mentioning it to your GP. The word finding thing is tricky because everyone does it. Everyone. The question isn't whether it happens, it's whether it's new, whether it's getting worse, and whether other people have started to notice. That's your filter. Now I need you to stay with me here because this next one is the one you can actually see. Not in a brain scan, not in a blood test, just watching someone walk to the shops. Think of this for a moment. Someone you know is walking down the hallway to your door, or across a room to the kitchen. You haven't seen them yet, but you hear the footsteps, and somehow instantly you know who it is. Not by looking, just by listening. That rhythm, the way their weight shifts, the timing of their steps, it's unique, right? That is what neurologists call your motor signature. It's the fingerprint of how you move. And your brain is doing an enormous amount of work to keep all of that coordinated, far more than people realize. And so when vital wiring connections between these parts of the brain get damaged, you can see it in the way that you move, the way that you walk. I've seen it in a 70-year-old man recently. He didn't have any pain or limp or anything, but he was getting a bit slower to cross at the traffic lights and more cautiously walking maybe than he would have been. Now, on its own, that could be arthritis, it could be his back, it could be a dozen things. But here's the test that catches my attention. I ask him to walk down the corridor. Fine, normal. Then I ask him to walk down the corridor and count backwards from 107s. And he stops. Not because he can't do the maths, because his brain can't do both at the same time anymore. That's called dual task interference. That often appears 10 to 15 years before a diagnosis of dementia. And when walking becomes something your brain has to think about rather than just do, that tells me the cognitive reserve, the spare capacity, is shrinking. Try it next time you walk down a hallway, across a room. Say the names of animals out loud as you move. Cat, dog, horse, elephant. Most healthy brains manage both tasks together without much change. But subtle changes can make you slow down, shuffle, or even pause mid-step while your brain prioritizes the thinking task. Now, does slowing down a bit mean dementia? No. Please hear me out on that. Plenty of people slow down with age. That's normal. What I'm looking for is a different type of change. A change in your pattern, your motor signature shifting, especially if your partner has noticed it before you have. 4 signs, and not one of them has really been memory and forgetting. The last one, deep down you know how important this is for your brain, but throughout life it gets neglected. It's also one of the signs that most people connect with dementia risk. Right, last one. And this is the one I wish more doctors and patients spoke about, because when I describe it, some of you watching will turn to your partner and say, "That's him." It's called REM, sleep behavior disorder, and it means simply that you're acting out your dreams. Normally, when you dream, your body is paralyzed. That's by design. Your brain switches off muscles so you can dream about running without actually getting up and running. Pretty clever system. In REM sleep behavior disorder, that switch breaks. So you do move, You shout, you punch, you kick. You might throw yourself out of the bed, and you wake up with absolutely no idea what just happened. Your partner knows, though. They've probably been sleeping with one eye open for months. Now, here's why this matters. This isn't just a sleep problem. REM, sleep behavior disorder, is one of the strongest early markers we have for knowing something called Lewy body dementia. And it can appear years, sometimes a decade, before any cognitive symptoms show up. So if your partner has told you that you're thrashing about in your sleep, that you're shouting, that you hit them during the night, don't just brush it off. Don't laugh it off. Mention it to your doctor because that's a sign worth knowing about. Right, 5 signs, nothing to do with memory. Your nose, your drive, your words, your walk, your sleep. And if you've been sitting there ticking them off thinking, that's me, that's me, that's me, I need you to hear this. One of these on its own, in isolation, is almost certainly nothing. Your sense of smell fades with age. Everyone loses words. Plenty of people slow down. But if you've noticed more than one, and if they're new, and if the people around you have noticed them too, then go to see your doctor. And not tomorrow, not next month, but soon. Because here's the thing about catching something early. It doesn't mean you're getting bad news. It means you're giving yourself options, treatment options, planning options, time. And that is a fighting chance. And if you want to go further than just watching for signs, if you want a real doctor-designed plan to actively protect your brain, your heart, and your body as you get older, that's exactly what I put into my book, Live Longer, Stronger, Healthier After 60. It's a simple, practical guide built for people who want to take control of their health now, before problems show up. The link is waiting for you in the description, or go straight to drjohnmeyer.com. You can see it on screen. Don't just watch videos. Take action. Your future self will thank you. If you want to find out a little bit more about telling the difference between getting older and dementia, have a look at this video here. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe. Thank you for watching. I hope it was useful. Bye-bye.